I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting of the Carson Space Open City Advisory Committee. It's April 27th, 2015. We will start with a call to order, recognizing that Laura Fitzsimmons is here on a conference telephone arrangement from Las Vegas. So if we could have a roll call.
Chairperson Scott.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Riedel. Here. Member Evans. Here. Member Fitzsimmons. Member Inverson. Here. Member Welch. Here. Member Welburn. Here. A quorum is present.
Thank you. We need to make sure that Member Fitzsimmons responds. I wonder if she's still on mute.
I was still on mute. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We appreciate your being a part of the meeting tonight. Next item, do we have any public comments? We will have opportunities for public comments at the as a part of each agenda item, but are there any general public comments at this time regarding items which are not on the agenda? Please come forward if you would, identify yourself, and nice to be here.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sue Hassler. I just want to know, can we get a copy of the minutes after? Is there a way to get a copy of the minutes?
For tonight's meeting or last time's meeting?
Tonight's meeting.
If you'll leave your contact information with staff here, I'm sure they'll get you a copy of the minutes electronically.
Thank you.
And we would typically have those minutes shortly before our next meeting, so it'll be a little while before they're out, but we're happy to distribute them.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'll do that.
Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into consideration and approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Are there any comments, corrections, changes to the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. On page 3, under section C, the second paragraph, somehow or another, two things got rolled into one. My comments regarding Carson High School are separate from the video that we saw. That was for the college. So I think the comments from Member Inverson down goes under the Eagle Valley Trails Committee because we went to the high school.
Okay, is that correction clear
Probably
from the staff perspective? Okay,
Okay.
all right. Anything else? Yes, Ann?
Just one administrative change, and that's the title for Rich Wilkinson. He is the Senior Natural Resource Specialist.
Okay, thank you. And my understanding is Rich is not feeling well this evening, so he has not been able to join us.
That is correct. He spent the day at the office, so I hope Roger and I are feeling well tomorrow.
Okay, any other comments on the minutes?
Yeah, I have one more.
Okay, Donna?
On page 4 at 7:15, Member Inverson suggested further clarification in the vegetation section. I don't remember that at all. That sounds something more like what?
I was going to say, when I read that, I thought that it was me, but I wasn't going to quibble if Donna thought it was her.
Shall we give credit then?
Donna Evans.
Yeah. Or Margie Inverson, one of the two, right?
That's right.
Okay. Is that correction duly noted? Okay. Anything else? Any other? Yes, Margie.
I have one comment that I read through here. There's a part where they're talking about the erosion on the BLM property, and they talked about watershed, and they were using it as watershed, but it's not the word watershed. Watershed's down the drainage, but it's not a watershed, if you can understand what I'm trying to say. And I will find it here.
Are you saying it was shedding water, but it's not a watershed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Is there a location in the minutes so we can identify where that comment fits or what we should do to make it?
Yes, it's actually at the bottom of page 4, and we can verify this with Mr. Kimbrough. But he says he's suggested working with BLM to resolve the watershed issue. It's not a watershed issue, it's a shedding water issue. Do you agree with that? No? Okay.
I don't recall exactly, but my sense was it's the big picture issue of that whole range, if you will, along Sierra Vista Way is what he was talking about.
Yeah, and I thought he was talking about the erosion control issue of that area. We're fine.
Either way, I suspect the gist of it will show up through the minutes if we're okay. Any other comments, corrections, changes to the minutes? Any public comment? Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to accept the minutes as amended in this meeting for the March 16th meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the March 16th minutes be approved as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, do we have a vote from Las Vegas? Could you hear us, Laura?
Yeah, I'm just, if it's all right, just assume I'm saying aye unless I make a big point of nay. Does that work better?
Are you giving us legal advice?
No.
Yeah, we'll confirm.
I'm just trying not to cause trouble for a change.
We'll confirm, I think, on each item. There aren't that many votes.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Chairman, I would prefer if she can just speak up, voice her vote, as opposed to just assuming. I think it's clearer that way.
I agree.
If that's okay.
Yeah, we'll confirm each vote with her.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any modifications to the agenda?
No modifications.
Okay, we'll go into meeting item A, discussion regarding Chris Bergeron's Eagle Scout project for the Prison Hill Recreation Area. Ann, are you presenting that?
I will introduce Chris Bergeron. He's here with us this evening, him and his father. They are both residents at the base of Prison Hill, and like many of us, they really care with what's happening in their backyard. And so a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago, Chris approached BLM and said he was interested in some trail improvements, particularly after the erosion that occurred on Prison Hill last year. And BLM explained the transition of the land coming to Carson City, so they invited us to the table as well. And they also explained to Chris that it's difficult for BLM just to build new trail, that they have an environmental process that they have to go through. But they did talk about certain maintenance they can do. And then I also informed Chris that we have our trail maps on Prison Hill, but we never finished putting up the trail markers. And so Chris is here with his proposal for the committee.
Chris, nice to have you with us. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your project.
Hello, my name is Chris Bergeron. I'm with Carson City Troop 341. I'm 15 years old. So as my project Ann said, it's the Prison Hill Trail Maintenance and Signage Project. You can hit the first slide. All right, so the problem that Prison Hill has is, well, after the floodings in July too, with the trail maintenance itself, is a lot of trails were taken out from the floodings, but they weren't restored or anything. And so a lot of trails are beat up there. And so part of my project is a trail restoration. So a day when my scouts would come out, we would clear the debris, fill in stuff, and repair some of the trails. The other half of my project is a signage project. At the base, on the west side of the hill, there's the north and the south parking lots. They have two signs that they have two signs of the whole trails, and they have names of the maps of Prison Hill, but there is no actual signs when you're out there hiking or equestrian or biking or anything. There's no signs that say which trails, and so if we could, I'd like to stick signs on the trails and actually so people could see where they want to hike and do the routes and stuff. So that's my my proposal is to put in signs and restoration of the trails that currently exist and signing the ones that the BLM and the city has mapped out. So this is the signs that the Carson City or the BLM has of Prison Hill. And my project only takes place in the non-motorized section too, just to clarify that. So there's trails you can see up there that are highlighted, but there's no, when you're out there, there's lots of trails that can get kind of confusing between which trails people want to use. They go all over the place. People have made their own trails that aren't even mapped, and so having signs would be a lot more helpful. So as you can see kind of here, some trails go two ways. And the right picture, that trail that goes to the right doesn't really even exist on maps at all. And a lot of the trails, and you can see kind of on the left too, have kind of been destroyed and taken out a little bit. So, next slide. So supplies and methods we'd have to use. The Carson City they have the trailer with the supplies, which we could borrow hopefully. And so we'd have to use digging bars and things to stick in the signs, which Carson City hopefully is supplying. Food and drinks we supplied by my family. So we come out one day, my troop, and we would do maintenance for about 6 hours or so with as many people I can get from my troop. That's about it. It's just in the non-motorized section, just past the fences on the west side. So it's not, you don't have to go very far in. Logistics, it's just people from my troop coming out for like one day as the project. It's how they typically happen. So hopefully many scouts. I mean, there could be more people than 30 possibly there doing this trail maintenance and signing project. So these are the actual locations and coordinates for the actual signs that I like to put in. I like to put in approximately about 7 on some of the main trails and where they go, because there's a lot of diversions and stuff that don't even exist on like maps. So that's the exact coordinates of the signs I like to put in. So safety, I'd have to talk about that too, and possibly also, I was talked to Arthur Callan with BLM, because it currently is under still BLM, but I know it's hopefully changing to the city within this month or the next couple months coming up. So that's just some of the safety things I talk about with scouts. And of course, thanks to Ann Bollinger with Carson City Open Space, Arthur Callan with the BLM, my parents, my Troop 341. That's about it. Do I have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Just to clarify, you are proposing to have a workday or a couple work days, whatever it takes to get these signs in? Is that where you are at this point in the process?
Yes, this is the last step I've gone through my troop. Everybody else, after I get this, I just have to send the paperwork up to the actual the district, which they've basically already approved. I just have to get you guys' signature before I do this. So make sure
Okay.
it's with you guys.
And in terms of locations and the content of the signs and that sort of thing, we're coordinated, Ann?
I will go ahead and review that, but Chris has done a great job, and even as required from BLM, to go out and map some of these locations, but I'll go ahead and double check that as well.
Okay, thank you. Chris, this is great. We really appreciate it. The Eagle Scout projects have been really useful and helpful to open space. So let me ask the committee if there are any questions or comments that they might have. Howard?
Chris, thanks for volunteering to do this work. I often tell people what a great place Prison Hill is to walk, but I start describing it to them and I kind of lose myself in it. So it'll be really nice to have some guide signs up there.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Toby?
I just want to second what Howard said. I know this is a big venture to take on with the, I guess, the braiding of a lot of the trails up there. And I guess I'd like to also open it up for you if you need any help or anything like that. I'll give my contact information to Ann and feel free to contact me.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any public comment? Great, Matt. We appreciate it. And is there anything that you need from us at this point, other than just our blessing, so to speak?
Not really. I mean, I actually want to have the date and the supplies, which will be supplied by the city, and the signs too. I know you guys have to get the stickers and print those off, send for those. But I think that's about it. Thank you.
I think it would be real helpful to be sure you get some some pictures from the standpoint of publicity for your project, for the troop, for scouting, as well as for open space. So hopefully we can get some publicity to get another open space activity kind of in front of people. So, yes, Ann.
I would just like to recognize Chris for another thing that he participates in the community. And at the end of your packet, we had a picture of the Carson High School ROTC class who came out to the Ambrose Carson River Natural Area to wrap trees. Chris wasn't able to be with us that day because he was busy, but he does participate in the ROTC.
Great. Okay. And we appreciate your father's support as well.
All right, thank you guys. I appreciate that for your support too. It's been pretty easy, easier than working with the BLM. So I appreciate for all your guys' support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll look forward to hearing when the signs are up, or better yet, reading it about it in the newspaper with a picture or two. Something better than your dog, hopefully. Okay. Any other public comment on that item? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to item B. Consideration to authorize the chairman's signature on a letter of support for a Federal Lands Access Program, FLAP grant, submitted by Carson City Public Works for various improvements along Sierra Vista Lane. Ann, is this, you going to introduce this one?
I will introduce the item, and with us this evening is Dirk Goring. Dirk is the gentleman from the Public Works who drafted the application that's in front of you this evening. So he will provide some of the background, but some of the information and why we're here this evening is the primary purpose of the grant is improvements of Sierra Vista Lane. But the grant itself is about recreational access and recreational improvements. And so as they were reviewing the grant, Dirk came over to our office, started the conversations with Vern Cron, our park planner, and then naturally, when open space is involved, we were also invited to the table. So Dirk, in his first few weeks on the job, was overwhelmed already with some of our maps and plans for the area, and so drafted the application that's in front of you. Staff has also, just on Friday, talked amongst ourselves about some of the proposed improvements, so just some of the changes that we have, and Dirk has also agreed. The grant talks about small parking areas and large parking areas. We'll take out that term because it can be determined at a later date. And for example, one is the equestrian trailhead, another is OHV, and one's the aquatic. And if you design a trailhead just based on uses, the equestrian would probably be the largest because of the turn radius needed for the horse trailers. But we'll take out the descriptive wording just to leave it general at this point, and he agreed upon that. None of the parking areas should be paved, just based on their location within the river environment. And so we're suggesting that each should have a gravel or a road-based surface. Also, there's aquatic trailhead improvements, if possible, because it is part of the aquatic trail, and the two other boat ramps within Carson City are concrete. That's what we would request. But again, this is the first time Carson City has applied for this grant, so they're not too familiar yet with the flexibility and the available funding necessarily. They have identified toilets and picnic sites. Again, it might be funding dependent. But with that, I'll have Dirk come on up here and give you more background on the grant.
Thanks, Ann. Hi, Dirk.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Dirk Goring, Public Works, Carson City. I want to first off say thanks to Ann and Rich and Vern for all their help. They've provided a lot of documentation to support the grant application. They've also done a great job reviewing our application and making it a better application. So I know you guys have, Rich has put together a staff report for you, so I don't want to kind of repeat all that, but the grant is to improve recreational access. And when we were looking at projects, we thought that Sierra Vista Lane was a good project, providing access to BLM, the Pine Nut Mountains, and to the Carson River. And so just so you know, for the sake of the public, the grant is going to propose to reconstruct 2.5 mile section going south from Pinion Hills. And when I was putting together the application, I intentionally left it fairly generic, but as I discussed, all of my discussions within the staff report, in the application, I made an effort to make sure it was compatible and comply with the Carson City Master Plan, the Unified Pathway Plan, and the Carson River Parks Master Plan. So as you know, like I said, the two destinations out there are the Carson River and the Pine Nut Mountains, and there's a range of uses, motorized, non-motorized uses that we are hoping to improve access for. We find that, as you may know, Sierra Vista Lane is in poor shape and it's deteriorating, and so we hope that this grant will provide funds to improve that transportation facility and improve access and create a safer environment for folks using that road and accessing all the recreational amenities in that area. So as Ann said, this is the first time that Carson City went out for this application. This application is funded by MAP 21, which is the current transportation bill. The first one there's a first round a few years ago that received about 8 applications, and I don't know how many applications are going in this time, but I've tried to get as much information and cater the application the best I could. As Ann also said, the likelihood of success is unknown, but we thought that we had a good match with Sierra Vista Lane and what we're proposing, so we put together an application and are hoping for the best. We did share this information with Carson City BLM office, and we've received a letter of support from them. And so we're here to request a letter of support from you too, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dirk. Yeah, the request in front of us tonight is to have the committee authorize a letter in support of this project. And as I think we heard a little bit from Ann and also to some degree from Dirk, this is a new potential funding source. Things are somewhat general at this point. I guess I would just mention for background, Sierra Vista Road or Lane, whatever it is a, it gets a lot of use, both from the standpoint of people who live there as well as recreationists and that type of thing. It's got quite a history, open space and the Carson River both. The Carson River Advisory Committee, which is no longer an active committee in Carson, but has a lot of support from this committee and a lot of folks who are active with this committee in terms of coming to meetings and that sort of thing, are very interested in this. The committee is very interested. We would certainly, anything we can do that enhances some of the items that have been discussed from an open space perspective, or even from, I think, a parks trailhead perspective, river access perspective, are important, but I think a lot of the details would be yet to be worked out. And I think it's important for Public Works to see this as a project that may be under the Public Works umbrella, but that has important parks and open space ramifications. And we would certainly expect and want and would agree to participate in a very active way in this project. I think there's just a lot of things that are happening out there that are outside the right-of-way that we could really potentially benefit and protect and stabilize and guide as a part of this process. So we would certainly, I think, and we'll talk about it obviously further, but in my mind, we would certainly love to see some improvements out on the road there. But I think there's a lot of other things that could be handled at the same time. So with that introduction, I'll ask the committee if there are any comments, questions, or anything that committee members would like to ask of Dirk or staff. Howard?
Dirk, where is the local match coming from? The 104,000, 105,000?
Regional Transportation Commission.
Oh, okay, good. All right.
Good question. Any other comments? Yes, Donna?
I'm glad to see the proposed improvements for the parking area and the river access. I mean, that's an area of real concern. My hiking group was down there a week before last, and in a little over an hour, 8 of us picked up enough trash for a small pickup. One of the guys had to take his pickup down to load it all up so that we could get it out of there. And I know we have something else coming up on the agenda this evening that will hopefully help with this. But improving that area, and the bathroom is a great idea. We have a real serious problem with homeless down there right now that are using all areas for the bathroom. But then it's going to be maintaining that area afterwards that is of concern to me at this point.
Okay, any other comments from committee? Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Margie.
I wanted to comment that I realize that you're talking in transportation speak and all that I don't understand, but under the condition, you're describing how bad the roadway is, but it seems to me that it would be good to describe also how degrading the lack of jumping off sites is for that area. The lack of parking areas and staging areas. Vegetation is getting trampled and destroyed. Erosion is being facilitated because there's no place for people to properly park. Mm-hmm. So I was reading that and I was thinking, I don't disagree at all with the roadway. I know it's bad, but I think you could make some additional points as to what the surrounding area damage is suffering as well.
Dirk, does the merits of this grant, what kinds of things make it stronger in terms of non-right-of-way issues? The public access?
There's a host of items that when you go through the application that you talk about, whether it's erosion, environmental, and all the comments that you're sharing with me tonight are on that application. And tomorrow I'll go back and I'll improve that application by adding your comments to it. And I think they're great comments. And so they're all definitely valid comments, and they'll be included in the application.
Because I would think that area, as I would envision the grant, and I don't know the criteria, but I was envision it would, open space and parks consideration could really strengthen.
Definitely.
And protection of the river, water quality, erosion control, slope stabilization, uncontrolled, controlling uncontrolled access to the river, that sort of thing. I realize you're just kind of getting into this process and into things in Carson City, but this committee has heard an awful lot about Sierra Vista Lane, about that area, and about the issues with regard to the east side of the property that we're about to acquire from BLM. So we've got quite a history. The staff, I think, could be quite helpful. Yes, Howard.
Chris, I see maybe a lot of things are described in item 3A of the application. And I would suggest that maybe you want to put in there that you put in that the project includes some permanent drainage and erosion control BMPs as well.
Okay.
I might add also some sort of permanent barriers to prevent the access other than the authorized access points. I think at some point you said there's 16 access points. I'm surprised that's all there is. It's wherever anybody wants to take off. Yeah. And that really needs to stop because that's part of the erosion problem.
Okay, any other comments from committee members? Laura, did you have any comments particularly on this one?
No, I don't. This has been really informative. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
What's been said.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there public comments at this time? Yes. Thanks, Dirk. We'll give you another shot here in a minute.
We've been, my name's Mike Turner. I'm president of the Homeowners Association out there, and we've been involved with RTC and really appreciate all their efforts and actually going out and finding this money. So we want you to support them, and I would bet that most of the money will be going into the actual road bed. The parking would be fantastic. It's a mud bog out there. Part of the reason why it's so messy is because when the BLM did all the work out there, they made no designs for drainage, so the water just puddles and people go out there and do their brodies and tear up the area. I want to, Donna's comment about people using the whole east side there as a bathroom, it is terrible. When I walk in the evening, I walk from the dam up to the garbage can, empty one can, and then I walk back, but I don't want to do anything with that toilet paper out there. So I think if you can get people back up off the river, have them quit changing the oil down. I found a place where they changed the oil down there, picked up the oil filter. This really needs to be pushed up, and so please support the RTC and their efforts. It's the first effort we've seen of anyone to go out there and try to get some money to fix that east side of the river. All you have to do is go out there and look at how nice the west side is, because people aren't trashing the riverbank and all the vegetation is beautiful. You go to the east side, it's a different world. And I got to tell you, there's getting to be almost as many people on the east side utilizing as there are on the west side. It just shows that people really are enjoying the open space and utilizing it. We did provide a letter of support to Dirk's effort, and it's been part of the package. I have a copy here, but it may already be in the application. I don't know if you provided it to them or not, but if nothing else, I'd like to at least provide it to the committee members if possible.
If you'd provide it to staff, we want to make sure we have it. Thank you.
And we've also mailed it to all the people on the FLAP board, Jeff Fontaine, and I forgot who else we included in that. Yeah.
Mike, can I get you to speak into the mic?
Yeah. We've provided this to the other people that are already on the FLAP, but RTC is going to include it in the application, because we really, as homeowners out there, we see the need for this. We see all the erosion and degradation, and this is actually the first step we've seen from the city in doing anything about what's going on the east side over there. And we really appreciate it and lend our support to it, and hope that you all support them too and approve this application.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there other public comments? Yes, Mr. Mark, resident?
Mr. Mark, yeah, Mr. Kimbrough. Mark Kimbrough, for the record. I'm actually, I wasn't going to speak to this because I knew the neighbors were here tonight. I live out there, and drive that road every day, and a retired park ranger gets very disgruntled seeing what goes on out there all the time. I have to remind myself I don't wear the hat anymore, but a couple other issues that maybe we could put in there is, right now there's no white line in it. There's been many situations where we're this far away from head-ons out there because people cut the corners all the time, a lot of the time. And I think there's even been a couple of wrecks out there. This was all done many years ago when I first moved out there with Kate Bennett, and about dust. That used to be a dirt road, and it used to dust that whole valley up all day long. And there were a lot more wrecks out there then. And I applaud RTC for finding this, because they don't have the money. They can't even afford to fix the roads in town, so this would have been a stretch for them at any time in the future. Also, I would like to see possibly in the application that many years of trying to solve parking situations, barriers is the only way to do it. So hopefully they can put barriers along this road where you don't want them to have access, and only have barriers open where you want them in. Otherwise, they're going to find a way through. So dirt bikes can go where they want. So I would hope maybe that could be in there, but I know they're going to stretch the money out. And so it had to do with vehicle safety. It has to do with the barriers. And there was one other point I can't think of. Let's see, the barriers and that, and I think that's good enough. But there's a couple of more important things, I think, to deal with out there. And they'll never find $1 million anywhere else to fix that. Oh, the cost savings for all of the times they got to come out and repair the road. Every time there's a rain event, a decent rain event, the city's out there paying a lot of money and a lot of equipment hauling out stuff, and they've tried to build the culverts that just plug up, and so it's a huge cost. And someday they're going to have the event that's just going to blow the road out in some places. So there were 3 things, and with that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, it seems to me that were this project to be funded, we would want to have some serious a serious look at the proposed improvements from both a parks and an open space perspective as well as from the RTC perspective. And I see the potential for possibly some additional collaboration there to try to get the most out of a project like this when we have the opportunity. So, other public comment? Yes.
I just had a quick question.
Could you?
I live on Sierra Vista Lane.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
My name's Greg Regan. I live on Sierra Vista Lane, and I just had a quick question. It seems like this is just in the very beginning of the process to get this grant. Is that correct? Are we talking a timeline of a couple of years, 3 years, 5 years?
Dirk, go ahead if you want to address that.
The timeline, the programming decision committee is going to meet this summer, and they're going to review and select the grants. Now, my understanding is that they're going to come up with a list, and the earliest that any of these projects are going to take off is 2016. And that's probably the first project on the list. So if you have a list, I'm not sure exactly how the process is going to go, but from my understanding, they're going to create a list of projects. It might be 3, it might be 4, I don't know. And then wherever you fall on that list, you might be pushed out 2016, 2017, 2018, and that'll be the timeline of the project.
Oh, okay.
So it is the front end, and it does have a couple of years, it looks like.
Okay. My kind of follow-up question is, I'm assuming that before anyone is put on this list of approved projects, that you have to be considerably more specific than just kind of improving the area. Is that correct also?
The application is written, so when the PDC reviews the application, they're going to look at this application and the proposed improvements. And we've outlined the cost for reconstructing the road, and we provided some details on the parking areas. And it does include striping, it includes delineating the parking areas and restricting access. And as with your comments today, I'll be including your comments into the application. So they are going to be making a decision off this application, but the application does not require construction details at this time.
Okay. Then are they going to be making a decision on specific projects like paving a parking lot or improving the road, or are they going to make, that's what I don't understand.
They'll be making a decision on the project.
On specific projects?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? Mr. Graytack.
I'm Dan Graytack. I live in Pinion Hills and a friend of Silver Saddle. I think it's great that we're doing something out there, really good, but we have to make sure that, are you going to have bike lanes on that road? For trails? I think that's a big opportunity.
Go back and forth.
Excuse me, Dan, why don't you go ahead, let's go ahead and let Dan make his comments, and then Dirk can address.
Split rail fence is not going to keep those guys from knocking them over. They're dragging big rocks. I think we need to bury big posts with cable in it or barriers. Like Mark said, they have to be ram-proof, or it's not going to work. If we're looking at erosion control standards, I'd really like to design like stuff what we're doing in Lake Tahoe, so that we're not getting that stuff down into the river. We're really going to make a big impact on that kind of stuff that's happening through those crossings. So I'd rather see a lot more of that stuff in it than, a concrete road base or whatever.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, I think the way I see it, we would have, if the grant were successful, we would have the opportunity to get much more into the design details when we knew we had something to work with. Because I think what you're hearing, Dirk, is there's a lot of interest in that. So I think support of the concept is pretty strong. It's just, and it's obviously premature to have a detailed design. But I think there's a lot of interest, and there's going to want to be, some collaboration and some other working together in the process. And who knows, by then we might own the land. Okay, any other public comment? Any other comments from the board? Laura, did you have anything at this point?
I don't have anything, thanks.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to authorize the chairman's signature on a letter of support for the Federal Lands Access Program grant submitted by the Carson City Public Works for various improvements along Sierra Vista Lane.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to direct a letter in support of the proposed grant application by Public Works. Any public comment? Any board comment? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Laura. Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, agenda item 3C, which kind of plays right into some of the comments we just heard. For possible action, to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the establishment of a full-time park ranger position dedicated to the open space program and paid with open space program funds. Ann and Roger.
I will open this item once again. So this is one of the moments we've talked about and we've waited for several years with the acquisition of more than 7,000 acres after the BLM lands trade to Carson City. We have a more urgent need for a park ranger. And compared to the current park ranger we have, the vision, as I recall with the committee, as well as our budget, the park ranger would be a little bit more encompassing, similar to a state park ranger or even a Washoe County park ranger, where the open space ranger not only would patrol and enforce, but they would do the park maintenance duties as well. They would clean our toilets, they would pick up trash, they would do other routine items wherever needed, repair fence, any Silver Saddle Ranch improvements. So it's a crossover both. But in addition to that, when the park ranger who works for the park side, they can trade back and forth and cover when one is absent on annual or sick leave as needed. The staff report does mention a recommend consideration towards a larger salary pay range. And that's included in the staff report because as we drafted the management plan identified salaries with Washoe County as well as state parks. However, after the staff report was written and going back to the city and looking at the current park ranger, this one would stay equivalent to that, and that's also looking at the broader scale of Carson City and how that position falls within the organizational chart, if you will. So the proposed salary would be the same as the current park ranger. Other items in your staff report is the Carson City Sheriff's Office has asked staff for consideration of a full-time deputy, with the legitimate reason being some of the things that we see on our properties along East Silver Saddle Ranch, the Carson River Canyon. There have been situations where a deputy is needed. With that said, looking over all our properties and the budget and our needs, staff does not feel that we have enough to justify just a deputy. We need the combination of both positions, someone who can pick up trash as well. The approval of this position is also laying the groundwork, if you will, for our next steps forward, for when we have that management plan adopted. The next steps after this is going to the Board of Supervisors, so your recommendation would be to the board for approval and then on to the Internal Finance Committee. It would still be a few months down the road, but the committee does need to know that at this point. Are there any questions?
Yes, Donna.
So full-time year-round,
That is correct.
not just a seasonal. Now, I understand it's not going to be a deputy, so they're not going to be gun carriers, but will the park ranger be able to write tickets?
Yes, they can.
This For explanation to the committee, this was mentioned in my report to the Board of Supervisors as one of the elements we were looking at in the upcoming budget. And so it won't be a new topic when it goes to the board, but I think this committee's direction and hopefully support is really important. I think there's probably more enforcement needs out there than what one person can do, but we also have some really significant needs in terms of the other non-enforcement type duties in our operations. So I think I would concur that I think staff makes a reasonable recommendation that we not at this time consider funding a full-time deputy position. And then one other question, Ann, for you. With regard to the you have a table 20 there on the one of your pages. The open space park ranger full-time, that's our current salary level that we're looking at in what you're proposing?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, do we have other comments? Alan?
Yeah, since I'm new, a lot of information that that the other members may have, but I'm curious to what staff's thinking is in terms of the linkage between this position and getting regulations specific for open space.
It's two processes that are happening at the same time. So we're not waiting for this position to come on. We are in the process of ordinances, the regulations.
Yes, Margie.
I was wondering, you said that's a ways down the road yet. I'm just wondering, can I see that far down the road? Is it July, August? Is it 2016?
You're referring to the acquisition of the land?
No, of having a park ranger on staff.
Oh.
The soonest that I can take this item to the board is June. And so then after the board recommends it, then we take it to the internal finance committee. So it's always a couple weeks. I'd like to be optimistic and say 6 months.
And last, I think it was our last meeting, we reviewed the upcoming budget. And so is this salary included in the proposed budget then?
When we reviewed the budget at the March meeting this year, we left $122,000 in the undesignated line item for the purpose being that if it's there, we have flexibility to move it. But if we, at that time, put it in salaries and the board didn't approve the position, then we can't move it back.
Okay.
So yes, we do have the funding.
And so with that, I think we're all in I can see an alignment here from some of our previous discussions where we've acquired a lot of lands, and we have a lot of people using these wonderful places, and I think it's time. I think Carson City has grown into active management of the open space, and I'm really glad to see that the other duties as assigned are much more applicable to a park ranger position, more so than a sheriff's deputy. So I'm all for this. I think it's a great step. It's always tough to add other staff members to the city, but I think this is an important for the open space program.
Margie?
I have another question on this, along this line. As Howard said, we have a lot of property already, and we don't have a ranger at all. What is the feasibility of maybe getting someone from Manpower to work part-time, just kind of patrolling and being a presence?
The open space budget does pay 10% to the current park ranger, so as he has time, he does patrol our properties.
I do have one more question.
Yes, Donna.
Are we going to look for somebody who can get on a mountain bike if necessary to get into some of these areas that aren't really accessible to motorized vehicles?
I have to look at Roger to see if we can put that in the job, what do you call it?
Job description.
Qualifications?
I mean, you know, when we think about areas of Prison Hill and some of these areas might be necessary.
Bring up a good point. We're going to want somebody, because of the nature of this position and the nature of the territory, they're going to have to patrol. We don't expect that they're going to be somebody who's just going to drive around in a vehicle. They're going to have to get out and walk trails at least, have that ability to walk trails. And if appropriate, we may be able to outfit them with a mountain bike. We had mountain bikes for our previous park rangers, so that's not out of the question at all.
Comments further from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of comments.
Yes, Laura.
Obviously, I defer to staff on the issue of, based on the mountain bike and the, get out and really be fit enough to handle some of the terrain that they're going to be looking at. I defer to you, but probably that needs to be clear from, if we ever get to that point, the job description because of ADA stuff. Secondly, the linkage between this item, which I completely support, and that constantly pending item about the ordinance. My support of this agenda item, I'm still have a continuing concern about, what I perceive as perhaps a slight disconnect between staff and the committee on the breadth of the ordinance. But other than that, I think this is a great watershed, or a great point that we've arrived at. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, I'll open it up to public comment. Mr. Kimbrough.
Yes, I came, hope you indulge me tonight. Mark Kimbrough for the record. This is really an important issue for, I think, open space to move into. And I've worn several hats with this part in my career. And then also, what started my interest in this, Roger told me the sheriff was proposing that an LE position take over the ranger's slot for the open space. And that gave me a little heartburn and some concern. And so I have a little talk here. I hope you'll indulge me about some history about law enforcement, how it works in parks, and my vision and perception, and how it's going to be really important for open space to support staff and to make sure politically that doesn't happen and put into a law enforcement. And I'll go through a discussion here that I kind of put together. Actually, when you guys did your retreat, which I was pleased to see your mission and vision, which is on every agenda, doesn't deal with that as being a major concern. And when you graded the final goals that you guys set at the retreat, public safety had one vote. It's all about maintenance, resource, all these things that parks usually deal with. Law enforcement is just one of the problems of the career that rangers have, and I used to call it job security, that 2% of idiots that are out there always making sure that you needed some level of patrol out there to keep things reasonable for everybody. So there's two different types of recreation that we talk about. One's dispersed. That's primarily what open space is. That's where people park at the trailhead and they disperse. They go hiking, they go biking, they go equestrians, they do passive recreation, which is your mantra, I hope, and remains that, is passive recreation. And those types of facilities, law enforcement doesn't play a huge role in. I mean, law enforcement plays a role in everything. It doesn't matter where you go on the planet. But dispersed recreation has the minimum of concern when you're managing parks and recreation sites and open space. Where you get in trouble are developed sites, and where you really get in trouble if you put a lake or a body of water there. I've managed all those different types of facilities, and those are the ones that require a much higher level of law enforcement, where you have water-based, Lahontan, Tahoe. And the river is water-based, and it draws, as you'll notice, most of the law enforcement infractions for the open space, the river. And you don't have any facilities. So it's a passive recreation. It's a dispersed recreation site that has the same problems as a developed just because of the water being there. So, and you're going to have Silver Saddle Ranch, which is a higher level development. You have some day use facilities like Carson River Park, but they're small. They're not any large facility with a lot of problems in them. And then the Carson River Aquatic Trail, which brings a different level, not maybe as much as enforcement unless they're trash in the area, which there's so little use, and most of those people that ride that know what they're doing anyway and are better. And you have an OHV issue that brings a higher level enforcement sometimes, but I can tell you after 40 years of managing a park, if there's a dirt bike that doesn't want you to stop him, you're not going to stop them. So there's a difficult management of OHVs that has to take place at the trailhead, and education and things like that. So what we've always been talking about is education with this group, more than enforcement. Now, a little history myself. I worked for Washoe County Parks for 7 years and had the badge and no gun. And we had ticket enforcement, but we never used it because it depends. In misdemeanors, which is 99% of what these park rangers do is misdemeanors all the time, which the court system isn't so excited about sometimes, unless it's a major one and there's something, you catch some guy dumping all his garbage out there, you get mad, or graffiti, there's some of them that they have an interest in. So there's this fact that all these misdemeanors are taking place. The tickets sometimes is what I always figured when I wrote tickets, and most of the tickets I wrote in my career about parking in Sand Harbor. Hundreds of those, but very few tickets a year. And usually I had 2 or 3 arrests a year, and that's 500,000 visitors. 3 to 5, and most of those is because they had wants and warrants. Or they arrested themselves, they say. You're just stupid. So they brought it on themselves. So arrests don't occur a lot. I mean, there's all these things that you can do as a ranger to take care of a situation, but there's always a need for law enforcement. And you're in the middle of a city with a really great sheriff's office, quick response time like Sand Harbor had, actually. And actually, the deputies like coming to Sand Harbor. They get bored out sometimes answering house alarms all day long in Incline Village. So there was never any lack of support to come out to Sand Harbor to support us in situations. And that is one park where law enforcement helps. But I'm going to go through kind of where, as I explained to you, that the need here isn't as big as you might perceive. So since I've had the Washoe County experience and state park experience, and when I started with state parks, there was a different philosophy about law enforcement and rangers. In the old days, when I started, I ran equipment, I was an EMT, I was a peace officer, I was a maintenance guy, I can do all these things. Now they're specializing more. And what's happened with law enforcement, because all of the need to make it specialized, now what vision does open space want when they see the ranger come up to them at the trailhead at Waterfall or in the river? A guy with a vest, gun, second gun, taser, all that equipment out in your park talking to your public, or would you rather see the ranger out and making contacts with people? Must be in a place of work, huh? So that's a vision that you need to have, and that's not anything against the sheriff's spot, because there were many situations you want the person there. If something happened to you, you want the person there with the gun and all that stuff on. When I started, I used to have a holster behind me called a pancake. Nobody even knew I was a peace officer as a park ranger. As it slowly changed, the snowball grows, it's called. And all of a sudden, more and more responsibility of the job, more and more and more. Now you're going to have cameras, you'll have all these things going for you. So it's a very intense job nowadays. And I don't think open space is enough for those positions. I mean, if they came out there, patrolled heavy on the river for about 2 weeks to a month, and did some heavy, a little bit more enforcement, the problem's going to go away. So 6 months from now, I think they'd be bored to death going to the Waterfall trailhead, watching people hike to the waterfall, or going out to Carson River Park, watching people picnic, or go for a walk with their dog. It's just a different level of how you manage the park facility and recreation facilities. And one of the things that I talk about was that this ranger would need some training, because there is some dangerous situations out there. So you need to be trained when to approach or not to approach. You become the eyes and ears for the sheriff. It's important for equipment. I hope he's got a radio or even a handheld. If something happens, you call. You're the eyes and ears. You just watch, observe, you back away, especially if there's a group. There's all this, how you walk into a group. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, you treat it like a duck, and you learn how to do that. And a lot of times, even though we were peace officers, when I was cleaning out a rye patch, I observed. I wasn't going to walk into a group of 35 miners out on a Saturday, seeing who get blotted the most. So you learn how to pull people out of the group, the sheriff has more things to do than worry about running out for little misdemeanors. So you have to watch how much you call them in and what's important to manage or not. So I'm kind of telling you all these things. So that vision of what you see as somebody comes in your facility, I think is really important. And so I think that you'd rather see the ranger there. The badge part, there's a lot of county systems in the country that don't have law enforcement. Washoe County is one of them. There's some that do, the larger ones. But what happens is it's a snowball. They'll get commissioned people in there, then they got to have people that are commissioned to manage those folks. Because there's a lot of rules and laws that apply to law enforcement that you need a law enforcement person over them to explain and understand all of the requirements of your position and stuff. So it's with all those things, and then they need to decide if they're going to put a badge on them, if they're going to have a handheld radio, and then one of the most important elements that became my most favorite part of my job is EMS. What level of first aid they want to have, because that became usually the most demanding part of the job sometimes, but after two CPRs that failed on me and a few bad accidents, I didn't like that part anymore. So, but that part is a part of, sometimes the ranger plays that role with all the different hats they wear. We even used to have fire trucks at Davis Creek Park out in the county. We had a fire truck. So we had a first response fire truck to help the fire department. And part of this has to do with how much you're going to give this person responsibility, but to me it's far more important that they're doing all these other duties and that you need to have a square-headed ranger. So when they do the interviews, there are certain types of personalities that trigger people's emotions faster than they should in the role that they play. And one of the things you learn, one of the training sessions I went to at Idaho State Parks, who did not have badges or guns, Idaho State Park, they went through a session that people who come to recreate with their family and their friends have a lot easier trigger to kick because they're there to relax and play, and the last thing they want to be told is something's going wrong. Some stupid little misdemeanor like their stereo's full blast or their dogs are running crazy. You walk into their group, and then all of a sudden a trigger will get kicked, usually by the shortest guy that's drank the most beer. Who knows? You never know what happens. Like banny roosters, we call them, would come running up to cause you heartburn. So the ranger needs to learn those things to handle those. And the minute you get a situation like that, they just back off and call the sheriff, and that's their job. And if there's ever a felony, in all the parks I managed in at Tahoe, I had about every felony could ever occur in the park. They drive over me like I'm invisible for felonies, the sheriff's department. We're not trained to handle those things. So we're just witnesses, so that we just get out of their way, and we're not really responsible for those. Never were. So we see them, they're reported, and they're there faster than you could believe for felonies. That's their bailiwick, because to manage those types of things that take place. And there have been felonies, even out there in the east side of the river that's occurred out there. So when you talk about, and then if you have juveniles, which is a lot of problems, they're using the court systems for little misdemeanors. If they're out with a dirt bike tearing up the backside of Tahoe, they thought that was better than them out robbing banks. So they're having fun with their dirt bikes and they're playing. So there's a different level of how you work with youth. If they're outdoors in a park and did something wrong, that's better than a lot of things that a lot of kids do that they're concerned about. And you got to handle juveniles totally different. And on misdemeanors, they have to witness it. You have to see it. So if they can write the tickets, that helps, but you just have to be in the right situation so they can write them and feel protected while they're doing that. Because that's part of the problem. People report things to you. If you don't see it, you can't do anything about it. So I get hundreds of things that came and reported to me. You got to go do something about this. If I don't see it, I can't do that. But there's a little secret where if it was really bad, you can have that person who saw it sign a citation as a public citizen, and you go to court like you signed it. So that was for the bad thing. So I'm telling you all this so that you support this if it gets political at any point where there's a concern, because what could happen is some situation with a ranger. And there was a very serious situation where at Lahontan that brought a lot of interest into law enforcement in parks when the guy was caught by an undercover policeman offered a bribe to go kill 2 rangers out of Lahontan because they busted him. So that gives you some idea that stuff does happen to rangers. These are peace officers, so they weren't uncommissioned rangers. When I was work Washoe County, I had some major incidents because Davis Creek Park, when I was there, was when the MGM was built, and there was a huge housing shortage, and I had hundreds of people out there doing all kinds of things. I learned more about the welfare system and providing for children and all those things out there during that time. And Mark,
can I get you to kind of...
Yeah, I'm coming down the bottom. I'm sorry. So here's some major points. Okay, one, park design can solve most of these problems. If you put barriers in where you don't want people to play, they're not in there causing you problems. And if you put your site, like Carson River Park, down near the river where it's all there, instead of way down in the back dark corner and all these things, you can design all this stuff in. So as you learn, you design that. The interpretive interest is the educational part. The word enforce isn't usually used. It's educate or interpret the rules and regulations so that you can help with that. And then one other important point is BLM and U.S. Forest Service have thousands of acres, and they'll have 1 or 2 police officers for all that. Thousands of acres. I think the BLM guy has like 1 million acres for one law enforcement guy. Just to show you it can be done. And that's it. I'm sorry, I know I went, but I think it's really important that everybody understands that so you can defend that to people that might ask questions about that. And thank you for your patience, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. I think there's obviously a whole lot more to it than meets the eye. And I think your experience helps us begin to understand some of the things and probably reinforces that we're not ready to be law enforcement at this point in time. Any other public comment? Any other comments from the board, committee? Okay, we have a recommendation for action. Do we have a motion?
I'll do it. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the establishment of a full-time park ranger position dedicated to the open space program and paid with open space program funds.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors a full-time ranger position for open space. Is there any further comment from the board? Any public comment? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Laura. So noted. Okay, passes unanimously. Next item, 3D. Authorize the open space administrator to enter into discussions and determine the feasibility of a land transaction for the Old Woods Ranch LLC. Assessor parcel numbers 007-05179 and 007-05112, and adjacent parcels owned by Schultz Investments, APNs 007-05109 and 007-05170, all located along the north side of U.S. Highway 50. Ann.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I begin the staff report, there is one change to the request and the recommended action. The APN, if you follow the Schultz Ranch Investments, APN 007-05109, if you can scratch that off. After the staff report was written, I did have a phone conversation with Bill Schultz, one member of the family, and the Schultz Investments owns 3 parcels. 2 are not under consideration at this time. So if you can remove that, and then since I'm on conversation with that parcel as well, the second parcel, 007-05170, the proposal by Bill Schultz and his sister is that parcel in itself, I believe, is 275 acres. They are in the process of dividing that parcel. 55 acres on the west side abuts the Woods Ranch. So their proposal is to have that part of the Woods Ranch transaction. The remaining 220 acres, they will sell for fee title. So a few changes. The Woods Ranch has been in front of this committee in the past, so maybe before many of you were on the committee. Back in 2010, there was an application submitted to the Farm and Ranch Lands Protection Program for a conservation easement. It was not funded at that time, and the significance of the Old Woods Ranch, and I have the map up on the overhead for you as well. The Old Woods Ranch encompasses about the lower third of the meadow that we refer to as the Horse Creek Ranch Meadow. So that's why this property has remained on our maps and has remained an interest of the committee, is essentially to complete the protection of that meadow. And we have members of the family here this evening too, and they can provide any extra comments. Last December, when we talked about the work plan for the year, these were identified under the land acquisitions. For some of the reasons, because they have been discussed in the past, but also Schultz Investments came to the Open Space Committee. They are interested in selling their property. And so at that time, it was on there for the committee's review. Does it stay on our work plan? And that's why we are here today. Does the committee agree on moving forward? If the committee does see the value in pursuing these parcels any which way, it is staff's recommendation to hire Nevada Land Trust simply because of workload. If it is a priority, we just cannot manage that at this time. We have worked with Nevada Land Trust on one full acquisition. That was from John Serpa, part of the Carson River Canyon Open Space. And Nevada Land Trust is currently working up in Upper Ash Canyon for the Benham Marshall acquisition. They are working with state parks right now, and we're supporting that effort. We would like state parks to have it. If for some reason it falls through, it does abut our property, the Wilson acquisition. I'll show you on the map. Right up here is that Wilson acquisition that we acquired through the Forest Legacy program. And this is the other parcel I was just talking about. Nevada Land Trust is working on this one right now for state parks. If we hired Nevada Land Trust, the goal is that they would help evaluate the parcel. So maybe that would be the first report to the Open Space Advisory Committee to tell us what is the value of the land. They can help with negotiations and with funding. With that said, like the Farm and Ranch Protection Program, that funding in itself for the conservation easement is a 50-50 match. So we could get some money, but we would have to match it 50% some way, whether it's open space or we find another grant. I don't know at this time. We have also initiated the conversations with the U.S. Forest Service for the Schultz Schultz Investments parcel, because the property to the north of that is Forest Service. The first reaction is, yes, we're interested because it meets our goal that we want to purchase in holdings and have that consolidated ownership. However, doesn't meet their uppermost goal, which is watershed. So they were asking, what are their water sources, creeks, streams, rivers, so that watershed component. And as they have been applying for funding sources, that is more important than the consolidated ownership. I think there might be a spring on here. Again, that's where Nevada Land Trust can help with that evaluation. As for funding, if we hired Nevada Land Trust, we do have funding under professional services. I don't have a quote or dollar amount for you at this time. As for purchasing and matching, we really don't have money. In the next budget cycle, we allocated $50,000 for land acquisitions. We are currently in negotiations still with Michael Fagan, and I'll have a staff update later on a land exchange. So we will be potentially spending money on appraisals and if there's a difference in the trade value. So there's not a lot of money really to apply towards land acquisitions at the moment. However, any of the grants usually take multiple years, and so we can revisit the budget as well. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the committee of Ann? Yes, Howard.
Ann, you mentioned that we'd hire a land conservation group to determine the value. Are you talking the open space value or the dollar figure value of the?
The open space value.
Okay.
So like our criteria form,
Okay.
walk the property, what's the biological and wildlife attributes, scenic quality.
And so this proposal, well, first of all, is there anything material in the this particular agenda item? You mentioned there's some changes to the agenda item. Would that require reposting of this agenda item?
I don't believe so. It's just a change to
Okay.
your action, which
I
happens
did,
all the
I
time.
did some open meeting law training over the weekend, and so I just wanted to make sure. With that said, I think with the understanding that we're really in a bind in our funds for purchasing additional open space. However, with that said, it sounds like this can do a lot of upfront work to create the possibility of having other grants or opportunities arise and gives us more choices in the future. Would you say that's correct?
I would say that's correct. And some of the other funding sources, for example, Forest Legacy, in which we acquired that Wilson acquisition, I think their funding match might have been a 25-75.
Okay.
So there's other options out there. It just takes time to look at the options, what's the funding match, and to spread our dollars as much as we can.
So that we wouldn't be doing any sort of valuation of the property at this time. We're just looking at the potential.
Well, what I can tell you at this time, the 220 acres that Bill Schultz has listed for fee title, it's about to go on the market. He has a realtor. He will be listing it for $2 million.
I'd like to ask if there are family representatives from the Old Woods Ranch that would be willing to come forward and just kind of outline where you are. You've been here a number of times. We appreciate that. We know that this has been an interest. At the same time, to me, one of the big values that I look at is the lower end of the meadow that we have acquired the upper end of, or that is in open space, management and control, so to speak. So with that, if you could reintroduce yourselves and let us know your thoughts. We realize that you've been through this a lot, and I'm sure you understand what we're dealing with, but I think there's at least a general level of interest to bring it back, and we're interested in where you guys are coming from.
Okay. Well, I'm Charlie Gifford, and this is my cousin Helen Scott. We're Scholl's family members, and we're part of the Woods Ranch. The other members you mentioned with Bill Scholl's, they're all part of it too, but they have the additional properties to the east of us and in front of the ranch, the 40 acres in front of the ranch. And to give you an update, we've been working with the Carson City Fire Department. We've been lucky to have an arrangement with them. I don't know if I told you this last time, but they go in and they have their crews, seasonal crews, practicing falling trees and prepared for forest fires and what they have to know to do. And what they've done is help us. We have a serious problem with the mistletoe infection on the west side of the ranch, coming from what's now the city owns property on the mountainside there. So we've been taking out selective trees to help abate it. And so they've been dropping the trees, and we have to clear the slash. So it's a big project for just a few family members. What they've pointed out also is that, like forests all over the country, due to lack of regular forest fires in nature, that although trees are overtaxed, there's just too many trees and too much brush for the water resources. And that's why the trees have a hard time fighting the mistletoe. So with their new, I forgot his name now, Rod, whoever the new forestry expert is.
Rod Rummel.
Rod Rummel. So we've talked to him as well. And what he mentioned is a possibility of getting a grant sometime down in the future to help us clear some of the timber out of there. And what it's way beyond our we do well enough handling the meadow and everything, but it's way beyond our resources to do any kind of major timber operation to clear out timber and make the forest in the area healthy and prevent a potential forest fire. So we're hoping that they can put together a grant in the future for a rather major timber operation. But all this leads us to looking at the conservation easement as we could really use that. There's more than just the meadow there. There's the whole surrounding area, and that's all part of the open space. And that's what Juan Guzman liked so much about the ranch, was the diversity of everything that's around. surrounds it. So we are interested in a conservation easement and hopefully maybe some grant done in the future via the fire department. So you can see our, we're trying to keep this ranch together and keep it in the family and set up a trust fund. And that's why we're really looking at the conservation easement. So we would appreciate any consideration there. We're still in the game, still trying to keep the place together. And we just learned more about what we should be doing with the management of the forest that's part of the ranch. And all of a sudden, it's looking like a bigger job than we can handle without some help. Oh, they know.
Or do they? Okay.
Okay.
So any questions?
Any questions of Mr. Gifford? Or Mrs. Scott? No? All right, well, thank you very much. We appreciate your continuing interest, and we have an interest. Our eyes are bigger than our wallet, but maybe there's a way with some grant funds and that sort of thing, we can find a common ground and see if we can't move forward, so.
We are working, and we'll be working with Steve Walker, and just for that reason, too, to possibly put some funds together from different potential sources. So, anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? No? Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much, and thanks for coming. Okay. Any other questions from the committee before we consider a motion? Margie?
I'm a little bit confused. I wanted to know what you expect Nevada Land Trust to do besides to check the value for open space. Do you anticipate them looking at potential conservation easement assistance or any of that kind of stuff?
I have envisioned that they would start with the evaluation of the property to bring that back to the committee. Or if not them, then I can bring their report to see how does it fit with our criteria. Do we move forward? I would envision that they can help identify grant funding sources and even apply for grant funds. Negotiation if needed. I don't recall when you joined the committee, Margie, but the Schultz family was also very involved with Michael Fagan and that conservation easement, so the easement would probably look very similar to that.
Any other committee comments? Final chance for public comment. Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to authorize the open space administrator to enter into discussions and determine the feasibility of a land transaction for the Old Woods Ranch LLC, APN 007-05179 and 007-05112, and adjacent parcels owned by Schultz Investments, APN 007-05170, all located along the north side of US Highway 50.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second. Ann, is the reference to APNs consistent with your modification?
Yes, it is, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Final public comment, final committee comment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Laura. Duly noted. Okay. Next item, discussion only regarding activities, projects, and grants located within the Carson River corridor.
Per a previous request, and I suppose assuming the duties of the Carson River Advisory Committee, we are bringing these items to the OSAC on many projects happening along the river. We've had a great amount of success of working with school groups, community groups, and grants. And so just to briefly, for the record, we worked with the Carson High School ROTC class. We had Linda Conlon with River Wranglers led that effort with us, and she said 66 names were recorded on the sign-in sheet, and we wrapped or rewrapped 296 trees. And I think Margie and Toby have all worked in this particular area on Ambrose. It's the area when you drop straight down from the parking area, all those trees are done. This group did all those trees. It was quite
great.
an amazing effort. They were great kids. And there's a photo from in the Nevada Appeal with their project. Coming up next month, May 16th and 17th, Grace Works will be coming out to continue that effort. One location is the Morgan Mill Preserve Open Space, which is located behind the BLM office, and the other location is Carson River Park. They will also be doing some river cleanup as needed. As for projects, the Empire Ranch Trail has been impacted from high water flows. From what little water we've had.
Did those beaver do something?
Beaver moved in quickly, and we're losing the trail. And so when Rich came on, he, as the new natural resource specialist, I asked his assistants to help Scott and with all the various permits that you need. It's actually not in the river. It's actually a bank that comes out from the creek as it enters into the river. And so the various permits, talking with the Army Corps, with Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, all the various permits. And related to that, on the next page, he has received a grant from the Carson Water Subconservancy in the amount of $12,400 for this effort, which really helps when budgets are so tight. Let's see. And then the other grant that we are pleased to report is we have been awarded $15,000 from the Nevada Department of Agriculture to help with weeds. And we will be using the Subconservancy grant to Carson City to help fund the position with a little supplement from Open Space. And then here's $15,000 for weed efforts along the river. And one item perhaps we should have noted in here, I think there was only $45,000 available. So we received 15.
Very good.
Are there any questions?
Okay, any public comment? All right, thank you, Ann. Somehow the terminology, a position vacated by Margie Evans, hit me wrong. Okay.
Chairman Scott?
Yes.
I would like to say that I deferred my comments on weeds about the Sierra Vista Lane until we have things more in hand, until we know where we are. But I haven't forgotten the weed issues that are on there.
Great, thank you, Margie. Remind us at the appropriate time in case we forget. Okay, staff updates. Conveyance from the Bureau of Land Management.
Dare I say that the lands will be conveyed within a month and a half. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, BLM asked for their check. And we reminded them they had a to-do list before the lands transferred to Carson City. So they are working on that to-do list. Today, boulders were placed at most of the roads they're not roads. Social trails, social vehicle trails at the north end of Prison Hill, because it is not a motorized area. It actually was not a motorized vehicle under BLM per their documents. The Omnibus Public Land Management Act and the conservation easement also do not identify it as a motorized route, nor does our Unified Pathways Master Plan. So that was one of the items that our Board of Supervisors requested to be listed on their to-do list. So boulders have been placed. I think there's still 2 openings. The reason for that is we will also come in and install a fence because people like to drive around boulders. So we will install a fence but have some gate access for emergency vehicles if needed.
So is there going to be a parking area for the
Yes.
trailhead?
Yes, there is. And right now, there's minimal improvements, just being conscious of funds. It is identified as a trailhead facility. in the future, and I don't know that timeline, but it would be worth our while to apply for a recreational trails program or other grant for a cost share for those improvements.
Is BLM doing any mitigation on any of those roads they're putting boulders
No.
in front of? Okay.
And so BLM has asked for their check, reminded them that they have a to-do list. We also said that our DA's office would like to see the patent, a copy of the patent, just so we can compare all the details with the Omnibus Public Lands Management Act, the various easements. So they're ready, in a sense, but there's still some things on that list to finalize. But you might see an article in the Nevada Appeal this week that says by the end of May.
And with those boulders, are they putting any kind of signage up?
Signage actually went in a few weeks ago.
Oh, really?
That was the first method of education.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at the nature of the patent that they propose to provide us, and also I'm particularly interested in the easements or rights-of-way that the BLM may have granted prior to conveyance to us, and what obligations or responsibilities or potential for enforcement we might have in those easements or rights-of-way. In other words, I would hope that they would be relatively, we would have the ability to manage those if we needed to, or to enforce protection of those easements, or possibly, if they're access easements, the ability to have the right to add users to some of those areas, rather than create, for example, an access road that was parallel to somebody's driveway because we didn't have access to use their driveway for a more public purpose. And just look at those kinds of things. And I think, although it sounds like they just want to close it, I think it's only fair for the buyer, if you will, to be able to see what they're buying in terms of the fine print. Okay. Yes,
I just
Don.
have one other comment. Eagle Valley Trails Committee met with State Lands this last week. I don't know if you've heard from Mark on that or not. But one of the things that came up in that discussion was their piece of North Prison Hill and the OHV activity there, and they're very aware that that's creating an erosion problem. So it may be, just as a general statement, I'll say that that meeting went very well. And we were collaborative at that meeting. So it could very well be that they will be amenable to closing off the OHV on their piece, which will help us with our piece.
Theirs is the piece north of Fifth Street?
Roughly in that area, the boundary, and from what I understand, maybe
it's
State
south of
Lands
Fifth
had an
Street.
agreement with BLM, something along those lines. We are managing it in a
Yes.
similar manner.
Yeah, we're managing some of their lands, and they're managing some of our lands, and so that was also in the discussion that maybe we will just swap some lands.
Okay, so this is to the south of Fifth Street, on the border that's common with the prison property then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on the BLM? Public comment? Yes.
Robin Orloff. Just asking, Toby, you brought up mitigation of that area, the north area you're talking about closing up. Is that something I'm assuming that Carson City will do once you acquire it versus having the BLM take care of it?
Well, we have not talked about it in detail, but probably the logical steps is taking an overall look at where these roads and trails have been and to see what are the best recommended routes to stay open for the public.
Yeah, based on some of the comments that Chris Bergeron made, I think a more comprehensive look might be a good idea once we have full control. Okay, next item, update on property exchange with Michael Fagan.
At this time, we have identified an almost 1 acre parcel. It's 0.96 acres over by Eagle Valley Middle School. The Parks Department acquired it back in 1997 as the development. All the plans and were completed. We purchased several parcels, part of the Mexican Ditch Trail, the Hidden Meadows Trailhead, the Zero Skate Park. We acquired through the development agreement. This particular parcel we purchased, purchased with residential construction tax. And really there's not any restrictions on the property except that if for some reason Parks decides to dispose of the property, the CCNRs have to remain. The reason it was purchased was school access. Michael Fagan is fully aware. He will be cooperative. We're not sure on the details on how that would work. And so we have taken that to the Parks and Recreation Commission. They have approved the next step forward, which is a public hearing with the neighbors. And so this item will be, again, at the Parks and Rec next week with a letter sent out to the neighbors for their comments. And then, if approved, we'll take it to the board for approval to dispose the property, then appraisals, and continuing on down the line. But we continue to make steps in working with Michael Fagan on the trade.
Thank you. Long process. Okay, any public comments on that one? All right, update on the Quill Ranch project with Carson High School biology class.
This is another grant project, actually, that is funded by the Western Nevada Foundation, Community Foundation, and it's through the Dream Tags funding. And Carson High School was the grant recipient with Carson City Open Space as a project partner. And the purpose of the project is to bring the high school students, the biology class, up to Quill Ranch to identify plants, to learn about weeds, to learn about wildlife. And so it includes some of the materials that the teacher purchased to make this happen, as well as the school bus fees for transportation. It also paid for chemical control of the Russian knapweed and seed for revegetation. And so we are proud to be a part of that project with the Carson High School. And we participate twice a year.
Great. Any public comment on that one? Okay. Anything else from staff?
No, Chairman.
Okay. Member announcements and requests for information. Anything from members of the committee? Alan?
I'm actually not sure whether this is part of 5 or 6, so I'll just bring it up in any case. In trying to get up to speed, I read the Carson City Open Space Plan, and I was noticing there was an item that said that the open space element of the Carson City Master Plan will be updated at least every 5 to 7 years, and that was written in 2000. And I was just wondering, and this might be an agenda item for the future in terms of, where are we in that overall process of updating? Is that something that has been done, is going to be done?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that since Ann looked at me and said, "Do you want to answer that one?"
He's been quiet.
Yeah, I've been quiet. We have not gone through a formal review process with the Open Space Advisory Committee to review that plan. It's probably something that we need to do. I think that probably reviewing a plan of that nature every 5 years is probably a little more aggressive than maybe a little more aggressive than realistic. As you know, we're still trying to complete the management plan for the Carson River properties, and we feel as staff that's probably an area that we should probably focus on, since the transfer of the lands are fairly imminent from BLM. But we foresee that sometime in the future that we're going to go through a process with the Open Space Advisory Committee, similar to what we did recently with the Park and Recreation Commission in reviewing their master plan. It's a very long process. We would bring sections of that master plan to monthly meetings, and it took us basically about a year to get through the master plan, and reviewed the master plan with them, asked the Park and Recreation Commission if they had any changes, if the sections were still relevant. And at the end of that period of time, we put together a report that goes to the Planning Commission as well as to the Board of Supervisors. So it is a task that we feel is important right now. We feel like we have other more urgent, I guess, priorities at this time.
Maybe to follow up on that too, we've had this acquisition from the BLM pending for a significant number of those years. And until we have that property acquired and the management plan and the conservation easement the conservation easement is set, but the management plan is finalized, we're sort of up in the air. And I think at that point, Alan, it might make a whole lot more sense to stop and take a look at what we have. We've been so limited staff-wise, and now we're getting into the management, that I think some kind of a step-by-step process in that update may be something we want to look at. But frankly, I'm hopeful that we can also not lose sight of the fact that we're looking at some on-the-ground management, some identification of priorities. We've lost our weed coordinator. We have other things too that I think are part of it. So it's going to be a bit of a balancing, and maybe it's worth an overview to decide more formally at this committee level, what do we want to do? How do we want to do it? Do we want to postpone it until a certain time? Do we want to, roll into it some of the things that we have done with the BLM and the acquisition of the Silver Saddle Ranch and Prison Hill? Just what do we want to do? I don't think we should ignore it, but it may be that we want to more consciously address it as we go forward. At least that would be my thought. Any other comments or questions for?
I think, Mr. Chairman, my comment would be, I was actually wondering, kind of just not immediately, but a few months ago, the same thing. Do you think that because of what is written about the updates, do you think we should make an informational presentation to the Board of Supervisors, just to, because we're kind of prioritizing for ourselves, and I'm not sure it's a mandate, but it certainly was pretty clear that we just somehow, articulate in some form to them why we haven't done it, and I think it's very persuasive about the BLM land.
Well, we could certainly, I believe we're going to be talking to them about upcoming budgets and personnel. We could certainly, take that as an opportunity to bring it up to them for any comments they might have. Yes, Ann.
And Laura, just to kind of add to that, each year when we discuss a work plan, that is the committee's recommendation to the board of where we're focusing our efforts for the upcoming year.
Well, I understand, but I'm going to defer to the district attorney's office on this. I'm normally in different contexts, but we might want to consider, subject to what the district attorney says. I might be completely wrong. Carson City may be different, but we may want to do something just slightly more formal and just focused on that one issue. But it's just an observation, nothing I feel strongly about.
Well, it seems to me that now that we've raised the question, we are overdue, and we probably should at least bring to the board as part of a presentation, maybe a confirmation that our work plan, one of the aspects of it is to delay a formal reconsideration or updating of the master plan, and these are reasons that we think that's reasonable, but let the board at least be formally made aware of that. So if nothing else, we have addressed what I think Laura's point is probably well taken. I hate to admit that. Okay, any future agenda items? Any requests for future agenda items? Obviously, if we don't read about it in the paper, we're going to want to have a BLM update on the next agenda. Any other public comments? Any final board comments? Margie?
On a future agenda item, it might be nice to know where we stand with the management plan. I know you're trying to wrap it up. Is our part done?
Similar to a previous agenda item, just due to staff time, there has not been any extra time. However, I do have 3 upcoming meetings scheduled to revise it, but one of which I will probably have to cancel because I need to focus on Michael Fagan's staff report for Parks and Rec. And that's how one thing gets bumped down the line when there's deadlines. But it's scheduled.
I might add that we're now at the point where we're hoping we're going to get caught up a little bit with Juan's departure and then the delay, a period of time we had of hiring Rich. Ann was basically performing two jobs at once, and she still has the challenge of getting Rich completely up to speed too.
And the sheep are coming in, so
And
now
the
it's
sheep are coming
training
in.
on all the monitoring points and what we're looking for and how to manage that program.
So she's been pretty busy, but we think we're going to get caught up here in a little bit.
No, I think that's great. Obviously, the management plan is going to come right back into focus with any closing of the BLM transaction, too. Okay, any other comments? I guess our next board meeting is at the 15th of June?
If that's the third Monday.
Okay, that should be the third Monday.
I thought it was supposed to be in May.
Do we have one? No, I think March was.
moved to March.
Yeah, February moved to March, and so that.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay.
I knew one of them moved to another one.
Okay, last chance for any comments? Yes, Robin.
Just wanted to make, Robin Orloff again, some kudos and comments, and mostly kudos and comments. And I've got to thank Ann and Roger. I know, I communicate with you a lot, and I appreciate your very, very rapid response in the middle of, the breadth of what you're doing with the grants and the high school kids. And, it's just baffling to me that you get it all done. So I appreciate your consideration, and Rich has been wonderful to work with. So, and thank you to the Open Space Committee. And I totally support your ranger position that you're asking for with the Board of Supervisor. I think that's wonderful. And then maybe once Carson City owns the land, and I'm happy to contribute however I can, if we can get more citizens doing some of the cleanup, like the adoptive space that BLM has, and your efforts, Donna, thank you, and efforts of all of us doing our own part. So if we can do more of the cleanup, maybe the park ranger can do more of the ranging and education, and I totally agree with Mark about education rather than, gun and holster and all that. And the fact that the deputy will be available will be wonderful, because I know there are some sketchy areas, like around the river, that I'm really nervous going to, and it's nice to know that they can call in enforcement. And I wanted to thank you for working. I think it's great the high school kids are so involved. Chris's presentation was awesome, and I don't know if you've all seen Erica Gallegos, is it? Her mural is amazing. It's absolutely, what a piece of work that is. And not only walking along it, but when you go to the north end of Fullstone Park and you look back, the colors she uses blend with the open space. It's just phenomenal. And that you facilitated all that is great. And I've got to say, I hadn't been in Fullstone Park, Fullstone Open Space, for quite some time since you all cleaned it up. And it's phenomenal. The sculptures and the interpretive, and the area is so much cleaner than it ever was. So, thank you for all that. And furthermore, as I was going through Northridge, kind of checking around, I hadn't been in a lot of the parks, and I think kudos to Scott, too, for the parks and the knolls and the shelters and the views of the of the mountains. I think Carson City should be proud for its parks and for everything, you're all doing. And I hope, and I'll try to give kudos to Erica personally, because that's pretty impressive. Let's see what else. I think I covered it all, and thank you to everyone. I think all of this is really enriching our community phenomenally. And thanks for putting up with me.
Oh, thank you, Robin. Yes, Donna.
I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Muscle Powered, I tried a couple years ago to start a trash mob thing. Well, we've got somebody, Randy Gaw, is going to be taking over, and we're going to be having regular trash mobs on a monthly basis. In fact, I'm meeting this week with Ronnie Hanneman. We're trying to set up a whole kind of thing with Chamber of Commerce, and it's going to be going on to 5 Facebook pages, the announcements for trash mobs. So Robin, look for those, like Parks and Rec, Muscle Powered, any of those will have the notices, and it'll be a regular Saturday, monthly morning, 1-hour trash pickup somewhere in town. So we're hoping that it'll get really big, and 20 people can pick up a lot of trash in 1 hour, and we can really clean up town just by doing that.
That's great. We really appreciate all the things Muscle Power is doing.
Yeah, that is, and I'd love to, participate in that. And as I think Open Space knows, my husband and I have been picking up all the south line of Prison Hill, Graffiti Rock, and the corridor at the south end. And we've noticed when we first picked up, we were picking up like I don't know how many bags of trash a week. And I think that Mark brought this up. I think if there's a presence, there's been a lot less trash. And if we get a regular thing going, I think the people that are going there are saying, there's a presence here. Someone's kind of watching what we're doing. And Mark made mention of that. So I think between Muscle Powered and all of us mobilizing.
Friends of Prison Hill.
Pardon me?
Friends of Prison Hill.
Exactly, exactly.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Any other final comments? We have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.